Well, good day, everyone. And my goodness, I can't believe that it's March already. And back to last month, we talked about tension and the importance. Now, this month, we're going to get into our stitches. And I'm going to start with a satin stitch. And I'm using my Bernina. And the reason I'm using my Bernina is because I like the way the screen films. It seems like it doesn't flicker as much, and it's a smaller screen, so it's easier to capture what is being said. And my new one is 5.5 millimeter. This is my 735 that we're going to be using. I have a 590. I have an old Artista 200. The 590 and the Artista 200 are both 9 millimeter stitches. And my FAF is 9 millimeter. And what we're going to discuss is satin stitches, but the new and the old way, and the reasons why. Some machines won't have the new way. Like if you have an old Singer or something, you may have to do it the old way. So now let's get into the sewing. And we're going to go to the screen, and I'm going to describe how each one of them works and what is the difference, so that you can understand why you would choose one over the other. And I'm also going to speak a little bit about my old Janome, which I no longer have. I traded it for this new Bernina. That was my Christmas present to myself. I have a better relationship with my Bernina dealer, and there were some of the functions in the Janome that did not suit my style of sewing. But it was a beautiful machine, and I was actually shocked that I left my machine before Christmas, and I picked up my new one when I got back from Christmas holiday, and my old machine was already sold and gone. So he's a Janome Bernina dealer. He's recently got into Brother, and so one of his Janome people snatched it up really quick. And that happened to me once before when I traded machine. I had an old Artista Bernina Artista 165, which was also a 5.5 millimeter, but it had embroidery. It was an older machine. You had to use a serial port to upload designs. It was an interesting machine, but it was magnificent. I traded it. I regretted it the next day. I went back the second day, and it was gone. And I actually know the person who's gotten it, and he loves it to death. But it seems like when I trade a machine, because I take good care of mine, they're gone. So I have to be really cautious. But I don't think I'm going to be trading, because I really, really like this new machine. I've been playing with it for a couple of months. And so let's get into satin stitches. I'm going to turn the camera around. I think this is... Okay. I've just turned on my machine. It always defaults to my straight stitch, and I am using my 20 foot, which is an open toe embroidery foot for Bernina. I have one for my FAF. My Janome, it was the F2 foot, I think. It was one of the F feet was open and one was not open. But you also have... In my FAF, I have the optional candle wicking foot, which is perfect. And the reason you want to be careful with the foot is see the channel on the back. that's dug out, this is allow the stitches to flow smoothly underneath the foot. When you have a totally flat foot, this is a straight stitch foot for quilting. But see, there's no channel. So when you have these built up stitches, sometimes they can get hung on your foot. Now this is a number 23 applique foot, but it is specifically designed for satin stitch. Janome has also one of these. It's called the AP foot for applique. And Pfaff and Viking have several of similar feet as well. And this one, you can see the channel is even deeper, but you can see that the channel starts in the front. So that is so you can add a cord to your satin stitch. And next month, we're going to talk about corded satin stitches and the reason why you would use them or not. But this month, we're only going to talk about the satin stitch. And I'm going to use the 20 foot. If you have a 9mm Bernina, it's going to be the 20C or the 20D if you have a dual feed machine. And those are, the 20C is 9mm and the 20D is 9mm but allows the dual feed. Pfaff also has IDT, which is its version of dual feed, and it is, I love the Pfaff IDT. That is my favorite. But we're going to go back. The first thing we're going to talk about is your stitches. There are two types of stitches. Older machines, you used a plain zigzag stitch, but you brought the length down to like 0.5 to start. I have found that with the thread that I use, it's between a 0.3 and a 0.2. The one I'm using right now is a very thin thread, so I like to use a 0.2. But the thing is, a zigzag goes zig, zag, zig, zag. So you always have a down movement with your motion. Now, modern machines, if we go to the quilting menu, and here it is, 1315 on the Bernina, you have a satin stitch, and it starts at 0.3. But the difference between this satin stitch and the zigzag version is this satin stitch goes straight across and then zigzags down, straight across, so it gives you a more smooth satin stitch. I highly recommend, if you have a machine that has a built-in satin stitch, and many of them do, use it. Now, also with the width, this machine goes down in 0.5 millimeter, 0.05 millimeter increments. My Pfaff only did this at 0.5 millimeter increments, which is 0.5. The Janome only did 0.1 that I had, so you could do it 1/10 of a millimeter at a time instead of 1/100th of a millimeter. And that is also one of the reasons that I chose this machine, is because of its precision and its accuracy. So, like my Pfaff, I would just do it at 1.5 millimeters. And if my satin stitch was open, like this one here, see how open it is? I would use a thicker thread. But with these newer modern machines, you can make them more dense. So we're going to use this satin stitch, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it 5 millimeters. So it's good and wide so you can see it. And I'm going to start at 0.5 just to show you the difference. And see, you can see if I open this up, well, it opened up into a zigzag, but it also changes your tension to 2.0, which is also something that we want, because remember when we were discussing in tension how we want the top thread to be pulled to the back. And I'm a sewer, because of my stroke, and my brain doesn't function that fast, so I am definitely not a speed demon. So I keep my speed control about halfway, so it just does not zoom off on me. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come down here, and we're going to start with this 0.5, and this is the satin stitch, and I have a cup here that holds this, which is absolutely perfect for sewing. And we can zoom in like that so you can really see what this machine is doing, and we'll level it out. And remember, I'm going to use the 0.5. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through here and do a little bit of length of a satin stitch. I'm not going to tie it off for anything because this is just a test. Oh, my auto tie off is on. So I'm going to show you the stitch. See how open this is? We don't want that. So, now, if you only can go in 0.5, you would have to use a thicker thread. And let me tell you, this is very thin thread. This is 150 weight polyester, so it's about equal to an 80 or 100 weight cotton. So it is a very thin thread. So what we're going to do is we're going to shrink this down to 0.3 now. And we're going to try it again. So we're going to put it back here, and then we're just going to line it up here. And when you're doing these decorative stitches, you also want to use a stabilizer because you can get tunneling. And what tunneling is it bunches your fabric up, and it makes it look like it's a pucker. So we come down here, and we notice it's much better, but it's not a good tight satin stitch. So we're going to go back up here to our screen, and you need to test with this and learn what your machine does with your stitches. So we're going to go to a 0.2 up. So we'll come back down here, and now and you notice it moves much slower now. And I knew it was a 0.20 because I've used this thread several times before. And now we look at our satin stitch. Look how smooth that is. How pretty and smooth. And if you were using a shiny thread like an embroidery polyester, like an Isacord or a Robson Anton, or even like a kimono silk, and it shine, just think how beautiful that would be. Now, I'm going to go and show you the difference if we go back to the utility stitches and we go to a zigzag, But I'm going to start it at 0.5 so you can see the little bit of difference between using a zigzag and a programmed satin stitch. So here we go. Oh, this one is much narrower. Let me widen this to 5.0 again. I forgot to widen it. And see how much faster it sews with that stitch just increased? There we go. And we can look at this and see, I'm going to be honest with you, I honestly think the zigzag one here is smoother than the satin stitch one here. So what we're going to do now is go up here because we know it's 0.2 from our other test. So we're just going to shrink this to 0.2 and do another test using the zigzag. And this is up to you if you have a more modern machine of what to use is the old way or the new way. And I find many times I find the old ways are actually the best, which is weird. I know, you would think that the more modern would be better, but not always. So here we go. And see here how nice and filled this is. And I'm going to be honest with you, for some reason, I like this one better. But if you want even a more perfect satin stitch, you have to underlay, which is to put foundation stitches. And we were talking about stabilizer. This has a layer of batting and a layer of tearaway stabilizer to keep it no tunneling so your stitches stay perfectly flat like you want. Now, to do the underlay, I'm going to show you the difference. We use a satin stitch. We can use the satin stitch or we can use the zigzag. I'm going to keep using the zigzag because it's here. And it's just a plain zigzag. But what we're going to do is put the zigzag back to its default, which is 3.6 and 1.5. But we're doing a 5 millimeters wide satin stitch. So I'm going to take this to 4.5 width. Okay. But I'm going to lower this down to 1. Just a little bit. And now we're going to sew this. Here. And you're going to notice it's going to go very, very fast. And I'm going to cut it. And now we have this nice zigzag under here, but what it's done is it's locked that fabric and that stabilizer almost to perfection. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go back and we're going to shrink this to 0.2 because we know that from previous test. And we're going to raise this to 0.5 now. And we're going to come and we're going to line this up. And we can lower our presser foot. And we want this to be in the middle here. so we can even lower our needle. There we go. And what we're doing is covering that zigzag over with the satin stitch. And I know it's a lot of work, but you're going to see the difference. So we cut that. Now we come out and we look. See, it has just a little more texture. It's just a little bit smoother. Now, if we really want to make this nice, we'll clip the end. I'm just going to clip some of these threads out of the way. So they're out of the way. Now, if we really, really want to do this really, really nicely, we go to our straight stitch and we have a 1.8. We're going to lower this down to about a 1. millimeter, and we're going to move our needle over to the edge of the foot like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew a straight stitch down and up the edge of this satin stitch. So, here we go. Now we're going to turn this. And then we're going to, I have to move my camera because it's coming out. So we're going to turn it. And then we're going now I'm going to turn this back around, and what you will see is this perfectly finished satin stitch with a line down the side, but by running it along the edge, these satin stitches are locked now. They are not going to unravel, they are not going to move, they're not going to do anything. So this is how you do a basic satin stitch. I know these are not perfect. I usually, when I do things like this, I take a really long time. But videos, you can't take a long time because they get really, really long. And people get bored. So, but I mean, we could even take this with this machine. We could even take this 5-inch and actually go down to a 0.1 if we wanted to, and it will. I'm just going to do a short one really quickly for you. My Janome would have never done a 0.1. I just wanted to do a short one to show you. Now we can look at it and see, and this is where you get to it. We've gone to 0.1, but I don't see that much difference between the 0.2 and the 0.1, but this would be twice as much thread as this one. So you have to find, but this is also the thing of Bernina, because right here, that is a 1 millimeter wide satin stitch right there. That was so fun. I don't know where I will ever use it, but it is just so beautiful. I could see it like a perfect line down a quilt or something, like a pin tuck or a piping. And so you have so many choices, and to use your machine, and I would advise you to get you a piece. This is basically a fat eighth that I'm using, and I just put a piece of batting and a piece of stabilizer, and all it is for me to check stitches. Here I was playing with heirloom stitches and blanket stitches because I'm also working on an applique project for one of my quilt groups, and I don't know what I want to use. And so I hope this helps you, that if you want to use the modern features, go ahead. If you want to do it the old-fashioned way, go ahead. I find many times I actually do it the old-fashioned way because I just reach up and push the zigzag button, like for the satin stitch, and narrow it. And like I said, I'm used to using certain threads, so I know what I need. Like my favorite quilting thread is a 40 weight cotton, and I know the 0.5 makes a beautiful satin stitch with that. And with the Isacord embroidery thread, if I want shine, the 0.3 is magnificent as well. So you have to learn to use your machine and let it do the work for you. And don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a rush. And enjoy the process. And it doesn't matter if you have a fancy new machine or, I have a friend that has a little brother. I don't know what they paid for it, but it was not expensive. And it pretty much has all the stitches that I have on mine. It's just a lighter machine. And then I have a friend that uses a hand crank machine, and she can outsew us all with it. And all it does is do a zigzag and a straight stitch. And you have all the machines in between. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes the older machines actually, I think, stitch prettier. And the stitches are different. Janome, I found the stitches to be flat. Pfaff and Husqvarna Viking stitches have texture. They have a bump. You can feel them the most. Bernina is somewhere in between. I'm not very familiar with Brother or Juki. All my friends that have Jukis have straight stitch machines, so that alleviates it. But I have one friend that has a Brother and has the big fancy luminaire, and it's a beautiful machine. I even looked at buying one, and I just didn't want another system because I have tons of Bernina feet, which cost a fortune. And I have a really good Bernina dealer that I absolutely love to death who takes care of me. So I deal with it. So whatever you use, no matter if it's a 1920, a 1901, or the latest 2023, 2022 machine, let it do its thing. Don't force it. Let it do its thing and learn how to use it. Next month, we're going to talk about cording and putting cords under these satin stitches to make them have texture. You also use that a lot in buttonholes to reinforce the edge of the buttonhole. That's the old way. So everyone have a great rest of March. I can't believe we're in March already. So have a good one, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.